Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first Power Hour session of 2024. We're very, very happy to have you along this morning. The subject of our Power Hour today is the power of emotional strength, and our speaker is the wonderful Colin Marks. Now, people are just joining us, so we're going to give them a minute to I was going to say pile on, but that's not the right way to say it, on Valentine's Day, to join us for this inspirational session. So just give us a minute and we'll let people join. Now you can put your questions in the chat function, anybody that wants to ask us questions today, because we'd like to hear from you. And anything that you want to ask Colin, we'll do our very best to include it in the Q&A section at the end of the presentation. So just give people another minute or so. Colin, you're okay there, are you?
Yes, looking forward to it, Claire.
Great, great. Great. Okay. We've got people coming in. We're going to let people join as they can. I'd say plenty of cups of tea being had, because that's the joy of having a lunchtime webinar. You can get the tea, put the camera off for them, on for us, and get some inspiration. So welcome everyone to the session. We will be recording the session and we'll be sharing it with attendees later on. So do join us, but we will be able to give you a recap afterwards. As I said, any questions, you can just pop them into the chat function there. Our wonderful colleague Kate McCreener is helping us with the questions. So if you've anything that you'd like to ask us in the Q&A session at the end of the presentation, put them in there. And as I say, the power of emotional strength is the topic of today's session, and it's something that's very important, not just because it's Valentine's Day, but because every day you need this kind of strength in the world that we're in. So we're joined by Colin Marks, who has over 36 years of experience working with public and private sector organisations. He's worked as a visiting fellow at the University of New South Wales and an associate lecturer at the Ulster University Business School, with whom we have a fantastic relationship, particularly with our mini MBA programme that we deliver with them. And we're very happy that we're delivering that programme again this year. Colin is creator of the Purposeful Living Model, Finding Peace in a Chaotic World, which he created to help people with who are feeling the effects of work-induced stress in their lives. And to be honest, I think that's pretty much anyone that's joining us today. So without further ado, I'll hand you over to Colin, and I'll come back to you for the Q&A session at the end. Thanks, Colin.
Okay, thank you, Claire. Gia Karja agus Falcha ga Rang Shaw and you. So hello, and welcome to this class today. I'm very, very pleased to be here and able to share some insights with you. The scope of what I'm going to present today is broken down, as you see on the screen there. First of all, I'll give a short context. Why me? Why I feel that I'm qualified to talk on this subject today. I have no more qualifications than anyone else might have in the subject, but I have got some lived experience, and hopefully I can share that, and we can use that lived experience to learn from each other. And then I'm going to posit 5 insights, and that's going to be the scope and the structure of the presentation. And right up front, I'm going to posit that purposeful living builds emotional strength. That is my first insight, given my experience. And then building on that, I'm going to posit that emotional strength is only one element. And I would suggest that achieving balance across a whole host of different areas is critical for overall well-being. And we'll explore some of those areas. My third insight I would then suggest is that a person's relationship with the past, the present, and the future has a profound effect on their emotional well-being. And I'll go through some examples there and maybe ask you to think about some things. We won't have time today for too much interaction beyond the chat, but I'm going to ask you questions. I'm going to challenge you, and you can quietly think about those things and answer those questions yourself. Then my fourth insight, I'm going to suggest that acting mindfully enhances self-awareness, and that in turn leads to greater levels of self-acceptance, which in turn I would suggest increases emotional intelligence and therefore emotional strength as well. And I'll finish up by going through my fifth insight, where I will say that emotional strength allows a person to move forward even when they don't want to and when they're not sure where they're going to end up. Okay, and then we'll have a short recap, go through the 5 insights. Hopefully I will have persuaded you that those insights are as pertinent to you in your life as they have been to me in mine, in my experience. And then I'd be very, very happy to take any questions that you might have. And hopefully we can have the whole thing wrapped up in an hour, because I know your time is precious. So to go through the context then, as I said, I'm not a trained counsellor. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychologist or a psychoanalyst. So what am I then? Why am I sitting here in front of you today? Well, I'm a person with lived experience. And that lived experience led me to have a breakdown in 2013. And I never thought I'd be sitting here telling people that. But I had a breakdown in 2013, and subsequently I've had a couple of relapses since then. On each occasion, that's led to a short period of hospitalization. And as a result of those experiences, I've worked very hard to ask myself the question, why me? I was always considered a robust individual. I was always considered to be a strong and emotionally strong individual. And yet I found myself, I found myself getting sick. I found myself being overcome by my life, overwhelmed by events. And so I've worked really hard to ask myself, why me? And I've come to the conclusion, well, why not me? We're living in a world where any one of us, I would suggest, could suffer a breakdown. It's just a matter of luck, timing, and circumstance. I would contend that any one of us doesn't find himself in that place, or might find himself in that place. We're moving faster than ever before in history. More is expected of us in this digitally connected world, which is increasingly unstable at this time. And yet we often fail to recognize when things start to go wrong until it's too late. And that's what happened to me. As I say, I was always regarded as a strong and robust person. So if it can happen to me, I would suggest it could happen to anyone. And if I can use my experiences to help others to avoid the suffering that I've brought on myself and also to my family, then I would feel very happy that I can do that. After all, as a species, we're hardwired to connect. And if I can connect in this digital way with all of you and give you something to think about and give you 5 insights that might have some relevance and pertinence in your own lives, then that would make me feel very happy. As I say, we're moving faster than ever before in history, and the most recent podcast in the Irish Times training podcast series, Changing World of Work, Amy Blankson, who is the author of The Future of Happiness and also a founder of the Digital Wellness Institute, she talks about digital wellness. And as we go through, and I put some other areas of wellness on top of emotional strength, actually we should think about digital wellness at this time as well. Maybe sounds a bit paradoxical to say that on a digital platform where we're sharing, but I think digital wellness is very important now as well. And I recommend that most recent podcast to you, where Amy really does give a powerful insight to digital wellness and the future of happiness in a digital world. So to illustrate the points that I've just made, I'd ask you now quietly not to shout out, but to think about these questions. Okay, so have you ever lost someone unexpectedly, suffered a relationship breakdown, been bullied or made redundant, or struggled with infertility? And in addition to that, have you had to cope with mental illness in yourself or a loved one? Some form of physical impairment, specifically in someone you love, or suicide or attempted suicide? And if I was to ask each of you to put your electronic hands up, I don't think there will be a hand down across the webinar, because adversity doesn't discriminate. There is no discrimination in adversity. Okay, so as a family currently, we're going through 4 of those issues right now. So although I got sick in 2013, I can't sit here in front of you now today and say that there's been wellness over time and things have just gone up and we go on and live happily ever after. That actually emotional strength is about facing these challenges when they come, when they present themselves. And that's going to continue throughout our lives. And it certainly is continuing now. And we've got very significant challenges as a family. If I'd been given this lecture 4 months ago, very different set of circumstances. Now, some of these things, as I say, are rearing their heads and causing us considerable thought and effort in order to overcome those. So I would suggest that emotional strength needs to be developed in the good times and it needs to be deployed in the challenging times. And hopefully, as I say, I can give you some things to think about today. So insight 1 then. Oh, sorry. So before we talk about the insights, then it would only be fair for me to suggest to give a definition of what emotional strength is. So I deliberately didn't look this up anywhere. This is my own definition based on my own experience and insight. And so I've broken that down into 3 areas. So firstly, I would contend that emotional strength is the capacity to navigate and adapt to the ups and downs of life. Easy in the ups, not so easy in the downs, with self-awareness and the ability to manage and channel emotions in a constructive way. So at the heart of this lies self-awareness, and I'll talk through how we might become self-aware as we go through the presentation. And also, I think it's important to say constructive rather than positive, because some people are motivated negatively. Some people like to protect their status quo. Some people like to protect what they have and maintain what they have. And actually, if I say that you need to channel your emotions in a positive way, that might not be pertinent for some people. Some people just like to protect what they have. They're pain avoiders, if you like. So I think emotional strength has to be specific to each person. And I think that I would define it as having to be deployed in a constructive way, and that's what's pertinent and relevant and personal to you. I also think it involves facing challenges and setbacks and uncertainties with courage, moral courage, while fostering a deep understanding of our own emotions and those of others. And a couple of things there. Challenges come, challenges go, but also setbacks come and go as well. And as I say, I thought long and hard after I got sick. I established a pattern of living that works for me and minimizes the impact on my family. But actually, these setbacks can come at any time. After all, the future's not guaranteed for any of us. And also, as well as understanding our own emotions, I think emotional strength also, there's an element of understanding the emotions of others. And at work, okay, we might see that some folk are struggling. They may not admit to struggling, but if we can understand and recognize negative emotions or counterproductive emotions in others, then we may be able to help them as well. And finally, I would contend then emotional strength empowers us to endure the hardships, learn from our experiences, and cultivate a sense of inner balance and well-being. And that balance is important as well. So that's how I would define emotional strength, and where the golden thread of logic for this webinar will weave its way, hopefully, through the 5 insights. Turning to insight 1 then, I would contend right up front that purposeful living builds emotional strength. This is my purposeful living model. Not quite created while I was in my hospital bed back in 2013, but not far off. I created this model not long after I got out of hospital, and I also created it before I really started to read about the subject, I have purposefully not changed anything in it. So I have not reverse engineered my model. This is the model as I conceived it, and this is the model as I produced it, as I say, on a blank sheet of paper not long after I got out of hospital. And I really wanted to find peace in a chaotic world. And by chaotic world, what I meant for myself was just a world that I couldn't control, a world where external factors were beyond my control. And if that was the foundation, I thought that purposeful living would provide the shelter for me to achieve that firm foundation. And really, for me, the mortar that held everything together was living in the present. It was very clear to me that ruminating on the past, where I'd had some difficulties brought on by trauma, and then ruminating and fixating on the future that I had no control over, it wasn't guaranteed to me anyway, that those were deeply unhelpful for me. And so in my model, living in the present was very important. And hopefully I can go on to suggest that other people more learned than me have suggested that as well. And then the walls that held everything together were, for me, were feeling healthy, being relaxed, and possessing a sense of self-worth. And then the bricks within each of those walls, if you like, I started to think about, well, what would that look like? I want to feel healthy. What does that mean for me? And as I say, for me, that was sensible eating, moderate alcohol consumption, regular exercise, physical needs met, and emotional needs met. And I think that's still pertinent for me today as it was 10 years ago whenever I conceived it. And we'll go through those in a second. And then the second component there, really, I felt, as well as feeling healthy, I needed to be relaxed. Now, these are quite Western specific, okay, because what did being relaxed mean to me at that time and now as well? And for me, being relaxed, you may identify with this, you may think that's odd, but for me, first and foremost, it meant financial exposure minimized and risks mitigated. So I felt that I couldn't be relaxed if I was going to be worrying about paying my mortgage every month and so forth. And therefore, right up front, I had to think about minimizing our financial exposure and mitigating risks. And then feeling relaxed also for me meant friction reduced to an acceptable level. At that time, that was the best way that I could describe it, because there's always going to be friction in our lives. Whether you want to have this for your dinner or that for your dinner, whether you want to go to the cinema and see this movie or that movie, there's always friction. However, that friction needs to be reduced to an acceptable level and not taken out completely, because I think that's a nirvana that we'll never get to in the real world. And then if I was going to be relaxed, I felt that being comfortable with me was very, very important. And again, we'll explore that. And then the third component for me really was possessing this sense of self-worth. And I thought to myself, well, what does that actually mean, possessing a sense of self-worth? That's a great strapline, but what does it mean? And so as I tried to articulate it, I thought to myself, well, I need my time to be utilized productively. I'm a person who does like to chase targets. Okay, I'm a pleasure seeker as opposed to a pain avoider. And so therefore, for me to possess a sense of self-worth, I had to be clear that I was utilizing my time productively. Following on from that, then meaningful employment was important to me. And then I thought that possessing a sense of self-worth required me to feel needed and valued by family, by work colleagues, and by friends. And then it was very important to me that my intellectual curiosity would be stimulated, because if it wasn't, I wasn't going to have that sense of self-worth. And then the thing I love about my model is you can just keep going, okay? So then I got those down, and as I say, I haven't changed those. And then I thought to myself, well, what does sensible eating, moderate alcohol consumption, regular exercise, physical needs met, and emotional needs met, what does that look like? And so then I started to build on that as well. And as I say, this is exactly as it was when I scribbled it on a page. And so limit alcohol to 4 units a week, undergo 3 sessions of exercise and 2 walks a week, make time to be intimate every day. Very, very important. A lot of our needs are got through love and our needs are met through work, those two areas. And therefore, when I talk about intimacy, I'm talking about on an emotional level, okay? Just stopping, just connecting with someone, hugging someone, kissing someone, listening to someone, okay? So making time to be intimate every day and creating space for nature at least once a week. And I thought that that would help me to feel healthy. In terms of being relaxed, and I've gone through the components as I saw them there. Well, I thought to myself, what does that actually look like? How can I know that I've achieved that target? And so for me at the time, I said that our mortgage should be less than 15% of our combined income, that our private pensions should hopefully be greater than £10,000 per year after retirement. Also, I'd need to spend 1 quality time with the children a week and 1 quality time with my wife a week as well. And if I was able to do that, not only would it reduce friction to an acceptable level, but it would help me be comfortable with me. And also, hopefully, I would be able to help my family as well. And then in terms of possessing a sense of self-worth, I thought to myself, read a non-fiction book per month, complete a tertiary education course, which I'll come on to in due course, learn a second language. And for me, I decided to learn Irish. And then volunteer on behalf of vulnerable people. And I can tell you about some of the volunteering that I've done. And then, of course, as I say, you can keep going. Now, I'll save you from me going through the rest of that. But what does limiting alcohol to 4 units look like? What are the 3 sessions of exercise and 2 walks a week constructed like? How do I make time to be intimate? How do I create space for nature? And I really like my model because it builds just like a house, just like the bricks in a house with the mortar holding it together. You can build on it and you can go to greater levels of detail. I used to put these down as images around the house, but I thought for the purpose of this, it was probably better to leave them like this for you. So I used to have a little house that represented letting go of the past. And that house was smaller than my house. It sat back from my house and it also had smoke coming out of the chimney. And to me, I had to think of that being my prior life before I got sick. And I thought of it as a fossil fuel house, a little fossil fuel house with smoke coming out of the chimney. And actually, my new life, my new house needed to be an eco-friendly house, an eco-friendly and environmentally friendly house to live in. And that represented, that house with the smoke coming out of the chimney represented letting go of the past. I also used to have clouds above the house, and that really represented letting thoughts come and go, because thoughts are just thoughts until we act on them. Again, it's important to me in my purposeful living model, as I say, to live in the moment, to not ruminate on the past, to not fixate on the future, and just as clouds come and go in the sky, to let those thoughts come and go. I used to have a big sturdy oak tree standing in front of my house, and I for that was standing strong in the face of chaos. I've actually changed over the years now, and I think that is not a good analogy, and I'll tell you why. Because the oak tree resists change, and the oak tree stands sturdy and rigid and inflexibly. And as it stands there, it can't control the storm, and it risks being uprooted by the storm because the storm will be too strong on occasion. And if the oak tree resists the change, it risks being damaged, or in the worst case, being uprooted. So I now think of standing strong in the face of chaos, chaos meaning just things that I can't control. I now think of a willow tree. So the willow tree gracefully bowing in the storm and to the wind, and being flexible and being adaptable, and actually changing depending on the circumstances that it faces. And so were I to illustrate that now in front of my model, I would have a willow tree and not an oak tree, and try and to stand like a sturdy oak tree, probably led in some points to me having those couple of relapses. And so I've adapted over the years, and I think more of that willow tree. Then appreciating life's natural cycle. I used to have some flowers in front of my house. And what do I mean by that? Well, if you imagine your emotions as a garden, and you're going to have the seasons being the different periods of time that affect your emotions. So that life's natural cycle. So you may get yourself into a new scenario, a new circumstance, a new relationship, a new job, a new place to live, a new country to live in. Okay. And hopefully the buds will pop up on those plants, and they will be something that we can take some pleasure from, and we can nurture them, and we can watch them grow. And so and life's natural cycle, spring, okay, the buds of those flowers spring, and for us our emotions grow, and hopefully they'll be positive emotions, not always, okay, maybe have to be a little subdued. We may not have fantastically vibrant buds springing when it comes to our work and so forth, if we don't necessarily love what we do. But hopefully that can come up when we can see those as personal, those as positive buds. And then in the summer, okay, the blooms are completely mature now, and we can take a lot of joy from those emotions because they're in full bloom. And we can enjoy that. And as I say, some of them will be more subdued than others. We'll have bright, vibrant colors in the garden, just like our emotions. Some of the emotions may be a little more subdued than others. But then as time goes on and our emotions change, if we get into a negative place, if we get into a place where our emotions start to challenge us, it's a bit like autumn. Okay, so when the leaves start to fall in the trees, when the flowers start to die back, we get challenged by that. In a physical sense, the gardener gets challenged by that. And I think life's natural cycle, to me, when I conceived of it, means that that's going to happen. And we are going to get to winter, and that there's going to be a period where our emotions die back and they go back down into the ground, to use the garden analogy. But actually, they're going to come back again. It's going to come back, and the buds will spring, and actually there's going to be a natural cycle, and we're going to, yes, we may find ourselves in challenging times, but actually we know that there is a natural cycle to things, just like there's a natural cycle in our garden. There's a natural cycle to our emotions, and that we will see those buds of positivity coming back in the spring of our emotions, and then the cycle starts again, and we have to accept that there's a natural cycle in our emotions, just as there's a natural cycle in our garden. And then I would also contend that harnessing the power of meditation is important, a bit beyond the scope of this presentation today. But if you come to the face-to-face day training that we're planning later into the spring, then we could talk a bit more about that. And as I've already said, important to be content with yourself, warts and all. So very important to be content with yourself. So that's really unpacking my purposeful living elements. And so I would ask you now, so what's your purposeful living model? Question mark. Dr. Viktor Frankl, who wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning, survived 4 concentration camps during the war. He was a psychiatrist before he went into the concentration camps, but he says we can find meaning and purpose in the most challenging of circumstances. Okay, and as Nietzsche said, a man who has a why to live for can endure almost anyhow. So I would posit then, or I would ask you, so what's your purposeful living model? What's your model superstructure? For me, it's a house. That made sense to me. What gives your model's superstructure strength? For me, the mortar that gives it the strength, otherwise the bricks would all fall over, is living in the present. Very important to live in the present. The key components for me, then the walls, feeling healthy, being relaxed, and possessing a sense of self-worth, all adding up to give me emotional strength. And how do they fit together? Well, the bricks that make up those walls I've talked through. And the beauty is, if you don't like how your house is built, well, you can knock that bit down and build an extension, can't you? You can repurpose it. You can have it changed to suit your circumstances. So if you came along to our day-long course, we would look at this in detail, and I would put those questions to you, and we'll go through some other exercises, and you'd be able to produce your own purposeful living model. So that is insight one, and maybe you can ask some questions on that later if you want to. So insight two, I would contend that emotional strength is only one element, and achieving balance is critical for overall well-being. So it would have been easy for me to just say emotional strength pertaining to my model is what it's all about. But as has been brought out in the most recent podcast, there's a digital element to wellness now. Now I would contend that the digital element superimposes on our social wellness because we're using social media. It superimposes on our intellectual wellness because we may be attending things like this digitally, or we may be doing online courses. And it superimposes itself onto our occupational wellness because we're all connected now and we can work across disparately organized organizations. So emotional well-being is just one element, and you have to get the other things in sync as well, I would suggest. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to deploy that emotional strength when you need it. These things here, very straightforward. I've not attributed these to anyone because these are the most common things that I have found over the years in each of these elements. I'm just going to highlight one or two in all of them. So the great thing is, look at any self-help book, look at any video, watch any video, attend any self-help course you want to, and you'll see that exercise, stop smoking, alcohol in moderation, the stuff I talked about when I scribbled that model down from the time I got out of hospital. So I feel vindicated on that area. Okay, but what about this? Recognize and act on early signs of illness. So if we don't act on early signs of illness, be that physical or mental illness, like I didn't do, then we risk our physical well-being being out of sync. And if our physical well-being is out of sync, we can't build the emotional strength that we need to take us forward, because the walls will be wobbly. There'll be nothing holding them together. So the other things there, yes, vindicated that they're across in my model. However, you'll see lots of things talked about recognizing and acting on early signs of illness, something I didn't do and something that might have helped me had I been aware of that. And that's why I say these other things have to be in sync as well. It's not just about emotional wellness. It has to have its place in overall wellness. The intellectual element that we talked about, and again, these are common things that you will see, and I actually think that I picked some of them up. So I decided to do an MBA. I did that MBA through Ulster University. I then lectured on some of their programs, which led me down to Dublin and to the Irish Times, where I met the nice folk of the Irish Times training. And now here I am today, sitting here talking to you about emotional strength. So you never know where these things are going to take you to. Okay, I decided to learn a second language, and I decided, because I had no background in it, to learn Irish, and I derive a lot of pleasure from that as well. And actually, learning a second language helps you to communicate better in your own natural language as well. So those were two things that I picked up, and I'm glad to see that as I've read more about the subject, that actually those are pertinent. Of course, there's a social element and getting involved and contributing to the community, sharing your talents and skills. You'll see that wherever you look about social wellness. And actually, I have volunteered with people leaving the criminal justice system and derive great pleasure from that. I've no experience in that area myself other than volunteering. And I'm currently volunteering with teenagers, helping them with their enterprise project, at their own business enterprise project. And again, I derive a lot of benefits from that. It gives me that sense of self-worth. And in the social element as well, cultivating healthy relationships is so very, very important. If you have toxic relationships, and I'm not just talking about romantic ones, that's really going to affect your social well-being overall, and that's going to sap your emotional strength, and you won't be able to move forward in a productive way. Whether that's, as I say, a toxic relationship with a partner, whether that's a toxic relationship with other relatives, with grown-up siblings, with grown-up children, whatever it happens to be, if there are toxic relationships in your life, then I would suggest that on many occasions you have to let them go, because that will affect your social well-being, and that in turn will impact negatively on your ability to be emotionally strong. And cultivating healthy relationships is very, very important. I think there's a spiritual element as well, and you'll find this a lot spoken about in lots of different places. So be inquisitive and curious. So back when I had my difficulties in 2013, I lost my religion in many ways. And that was quite sad, because I'd been brought up in the traditional Church of Ireland background, baptism, confirmation, all of that. But actually, I didn't derive any comfort from my religion. I just didn't find any comfort from it anymore. And so, being inquisitive sort, I started to read about other cultures, and I read about Buddhism, and I read about the Four Noble Truths, the existence of suffering, the path to suffering, the path to the end of suffering, and the end of suffering itself. And that made sense to me. That made perfect sense. It stripped away everything and got right to the nub of the issue. And it was like, yeah, that's what I want to do. And then the path to the end of suffering, the eightfold path. So right intention, right thoughts, right action, right livelihood, right mindfulness, all those other things I could see were tangible, and there were tangible benefits there. So I think there is a spiritual element. You'll see that written in lots of different ways. These are the things that you will find most commonly written down. And as I say, being inquisitive and curious led me to seek out wisdom beyond the conventional Western wisdom. And it's very important to me. And so there's lots out there beyond our own experiences and that which we've been brought up to believe in. And if you look wider than that, if you're finding difficulty with what you've been brought up with, if you look wider, you just may find something there that will help keep you emotionally strong, or help lead you towards a place where you can be emotionally strong. I have found that, and I think that is a great thing. So there's definitely a spiritual element for us. There's an environmental element now, I would suggest, and all of that is pertinent. I would just bring your attention to renew your relationship with nature. Before I got ill, I never would have taken the time to watch the seasons turn. But since then, I've done some gardening courses. I'm a keen gardener now myself, hence the gardening analogy. And I really do enjoy being in my garden. I really, really do. And that makes me feel healthy and helps me to relax as well. And finally, there's an occupational element. And I would just say, be open to change and be prepared to learn new skills. Nothing is guaranteed. Nothing is guaranteed, and we have to be prepared to change. And if your career doesn't suit your interests and talents, there's a lot more to it than just the bank balance at the end of the month. Yes, there's an irreducible minimum that we need to live. Okay, that is clear. But actually, be open to change and find something that suits your interests and talents, because that will help to make you emotionally strong in the longer term and help you to deal with setbacks, as I have found. So insight 3 then, a person's relationship with the past, the present and the future has a profound effect on their emotional well-being, I would contend. And what do I mean by that? Well, I've already said that for me, the strength in my superstructure is derived from living in the present. That was very clear to me. So that's the principal tenet I would suggest here. And then we have to be cognizant of the fact that the past shapes the present, and the present sets the conditions for the future, and the future is the present yet to be experienced. Okay, but to show that graphically, what I'm talking about here is getting from here, which is the past, the bricks all higgledy-piggledy, through, and that's really living in the present, but thinking about the past, ruminating on the past. The past has happened. Those bricks have fallen where they have fallen. There is nothing you can do to build that wall up strong. It's in the past, okay? And if we scrabble over the past, we skin our knees, we cut our legs, we twist our ankles, because it can't be changed. It's just a mess. It's just as it failed. And so I like to think about, if we try and live in the present, but always harking back to the past, that we're trying to build a wall that can't be changed. And you can just imagine just trying to scrabble over that wall every day. I think it's a powerful metaphor. But equally, if we live in the present and we're always thinking of the future, then it's like the image in the bottom right there. We're always organizing the bricks in a way that it's going to be better when I retire. It's going to be better, and I'm going to prep for that. It's going to be better when I'm married, and I'm going to prep for that. I'll do that course after I get my next promotion at work, and I'm going to arrange all the bricks in a way that sets me up for that. But actually, you're kidding yourself, because all you're doing is setting those bricks up. It's better than the first way, living in the past, because you feel like you're in control, but you're not really in control. And there's no strength to those bricks, because you're missing what's going on right now, and you're rearranging them constantly. And that makes you feel that, you know, you're achieving something, but you're missing what's going on right now. I talked about financial health. I talked about pension planning. But what I'm talking about there is not going onto the pension app every day and seeing how it's going and fretting about what that will enable you to do. I'm talking about making a decision based on what you can do right now, putting that away, and then forgetting about it. And so you've given yourself the emotional permission to do that right now, which is fantastic. But actually, you're not thinking about, well, what does that mean in 20 years when I retire? And constantly rearranging those bricks. Well, I can do this with that amount. This is what I'm going to do. Because as I said, nothing is guaranteed for us. And so the nirvana there is the top right, getting to there, and actually creating a wall. I like my walls. I've talked about the house, so this made sense, about a wall that's solid, and a wall that I can spring forward from, a wall that I can use now to shelter behind if I have to, and a wall that can be built upon in the future if I want to. And I talked about building an extension. We don't have time to get into this in super detail, but this is a powerful exercise that I use a lot on my courses. So if you travel to the past, what advice would you give yourself? And if you travel to the future, what would you expect to see when you're at work or home? So I've suggested some of these. So you might say to yourself, well, I'd like to take more risks. You might say to yourself, I'd like to take less risks. You might say to yourself, I want to learn from my setbacks. You might say, I want to cultivate gratitude and build a support system. You might say, I wish I prioritized self-care more. And you might say, I wish I could have been kinder to myself. And in the future, you know, how do you expect to be living? Do you expect to be pursuing goals people told you you'd never achieve? Do you expect to be living comfortably with change? Do you expect to be engaging in lifelong learning, something that has been helpful to me, and forging strong relationships? So you get the idea, and this is a very powerful exercise when you superimpose it on the concept of the past, the present, and the future, and your emotional strength. Regardless of any of that, there's 10 things to let go of. So insight 4 then. So I would contend that acting mindfully enhances self-awareness. I talked about self-awareness being an important component of emotional strength, and leads to greater levels of self-acceptance, and that in turn increases emotional intelligence. So what we're talking about there really is paying attention on purpose in the present moment with kindness, curiosity, and acceptance. And the main thing here is there's no goal or desired outcome. The practice is the objective. So when we act mindfully, It's the practice that's the objective. Now, it would be remiss of me not to say that mindfulness has its detractors. Now, it's been around for a long time, but some people would contend that it's cultural appropriation, it's commercialization and misinterpretation. There's a lot of individual variability around it. One size doesn't fit all, and it actually takes time to cultivate. I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. I found that acting mindfully helps to reduce stress, improves my mental health, allows me to regulate my emotions, increases my focus and productivity, and there's some physical health benefits as well. And in terms of the components of emotional intelligence, the one I would draw your eye to here is empathy. Okay, so as I say, having the emotional intelligence to recognize when other people are having difficulties, to be able to help them. After all, we are hardwired to connect as a species. And so I'm sharing these insights with you, hopefully to give you the strength to think about these, but also from your own point of view, but also to be empathetic to others and to see somebody who's struggling at work. And it might be somebody you have difficulties with, okay, but actually to have that empathy and that emotional intelligence, not just to be aware of yourself and to regulate your own emotions, but to help others. So what things might you do mindfully every day? You could mindful breathe, walk, listen, anything really. You can mindfully do anything. And insight 5 then, emotional strength allows a person to move forward even when they don't want to and when they're not sure where they're going to end up. And so, first of all, I would say, don't freeze and become reactive. Remain hopeful and proactive. Okay, so this is all about dealing with setbacks. Then be grateful for what you have and don't crave things beyond your control or things you can't have. And finally, don't forget to ask yourself, will this help me or hinder me? This is so powerful. I use this all the time. Will this help me or will this hinder me? And if it's going to hinder you, then just let that thought come and go. And as I say before, have the courage to let people go if they don't help. Credit for this slide really goes to Dr. Lucy Hone. She gives a fantastic TED talk entitled 3 Secrets of Resilient People. And I would contend that to you. I would recommend that to you. Very, very powerful. And that's really it. That's where we are. That's the recap. We've got 10 minutes for questions. So purposeful living builds emotional strength. What's your purposeful living model? What gives it strength? How does it fit together? Emotional strength is only one element. It's not a panacea, and achieving balance is critical for your overall well-being. So 6 of the most common elements of well-being, as I say in the most recent podcast episode, Changing the World of Work, Amy Blankson talks about digital wellness. I can recommend that to you. A person's relationship with the past and the future has a profound effect on their emotional well-being. So that living in the present is so important. Acting mindfully enhances self-awareness and leads to greater levels of acceptance, which increases your emotional intelligence. And remember, there's no goal or desire. In mindfulness, the practice is the objective, whether that's just calmly concentrating or finding focus. And finally, emotional strength allows a person to move forward even when they don't want to and when they're not sure where they're going to end up. And the main thing there is to ask yourself, is this helping me or is this hindering me? And hopefully I've given you some food for thought there, and I'd be very happy to take questions with 10 minutes to go. So I think we're in good time, Claire.
I think we are, Colin. Thank you very much. I was looking at the clock going, oh my God, the amount you've just put into those few minutes is amazing. Thank you so much for being so brave and sharing your personal experience. I know that's something that I struggle with, and it's great to see you being so trusting of us and being vulnerable, but also being so positive and insightful. So I'm delighted that you were able to trust us with that. A couple of questions have come in. Oh, sorry. On another note, sorry, I love the images of nature. I'm looking out the window now, and we've had two blackbirds fighting like mad when you were talking. So when you were talking about nature, it was fantastic. We've had a question from Janice to say, would you recommend any books that you found useful on your mindfulness journey in particular? I know mindfulness, like you were saying, was something that was, potentially up for discussion. But when you're actually trying to find some support materials, is there, name a couple of books or authors that people can go and research for themselves?
So the chap who created mindfulness-based stress reduction is a chap called Dr. John Kabat-Zinn, and he wrote a book called Wherever You Go, There You Are. And he's been around for a very long time. He started meditating as a young man. He brought it into his medical practice, and he has an 8-week program, I haven't done it, mindfulness-based stress reduction. And I would suggest his book would be a good start. Wherever You Go, There You Are is a good one. And then there's another book by Eckhart Tolle called The Power of Now, probably a bit deeper, but it's a good one as well. I think it's been around since the late 90s. And if you were really interested in going sort of on a deeper level, that Dr. Viktor Frankl that I talked about, his book Man's Search for Meaning is very powerful, but that shares his experiences in concentration camps and so forth. And as I say, he was a psychiatrist before he actually went to the concentration camp. And then he produced logos therapy, logo meaning health in Latin, I think it is. So health therapy, meaning therapy, logos therapy, so meaning therapy. But John Kabat-Zinn is contemporary. He is easy to listen to if you look up some of his videos. And that book, Wherever You Go, There You Are, is probably a good start point.
That's great. And it's also good for just as a mantra. Wherever you go, there you are, because it's hard to be in the present. And mindfulness is like when you're washing the dish, wash the dish. That's if you can center yourself on that. We've had some lovely a comment from Tanya, who said that her dad always gave her the advice to have something to look forward to and that you're planning towards. And like holidays or a new car or a night out or maybe a bar of chocolate, just the one, if you're healthy, if you're eating healthily. So thanks very much for that, Tanya, as well. And then just something when you're talking about in the work-based situation or the environment, somebody has asked before the session, we can relate to feeling drained in certain situations, especially when we're being driven by external factors. How can we bolster our emotional energy?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think that a lot of that comes to self-awareness. So you've got to recognize what's going on. So you've got to recognize when your emotional energy is being depleted. And then you've got to set boundaries for yourself. So you've got to set boundaries on your time. I'm a person that underestimates how much time and effort is required for what I take on. That's naturally my natural state, is to take on more and more. So over the years, I've had to realize that I have to set boundaries for myself, because I'm going to find that I'm going to get emotionally drained if I'm not careful. And that can lead to, self-destructive behaviors in the worst case, but actually, you finding yourself burning out at the lighter end of the scale, if that is a lighter end. And then find things to do that recharge you. So you have to be a wee bit selfish in many ways. So you have to be selfish in so much as, well, I need to recharge my batteries. And, at work, if we're in leadership and management positions or positions of responsibility, if we're not taking care of ourselves, we can't take care of others, or we can't take care of that project we're managing, or we can't take care of adding to that bottom line. So actually, you have to be a wee bit selfish, and we're all taught to be, to be servant leaders, to lead for others. But actually, you have to say, well, what areas will allow me to recharge? I deliver elements of this in some of the other work I do. And one older chap said to me, and I was glad he said it, made me laugh. He said, "Oh, that's mumbo jumbo. I just go fishing." Well, of course, he was finding an area that he found as a coping mechanism. He just didn't think of it in that way. So I said to him, "That's brilliant that you go fishing. That is so good," because that was how he recharged his batteries, and that was his coping strategy. And then I would also say seek support. Okay, so that was why we didn't get time to explore it in greater detail, but that if you were going to give yourself advice in the past, set up a support network, whether that's family, friends, or professionals at work. Do you have a mentor at work? Do you have somebody you can share things with? Because a problem shared is a problem halved. And I find that pertinent. And so, the support network that I have found since my experience has been fascinating. Kate Adie wrote a book once called The Kindness of Strangers. And so that really resonated with me, because as I was going through my journey, I found support in areas that I never thought I would find support in. And I now try and support other people as well. I'm speaking to a colleague I hadn't spoken to for 30 years, but he searched me out, and I'm helping him deal with some of this stuff just as a support, an informal support network. So I think find things to recharge. Be careful with your time and be aware of your triggers, and seek support wherever that support comes from. And don't discount support that you never thought you would get. It comes from all sorts of strange quarters whenever you actually need it.
True. And I'm just looking at some of the comments. They're great comments coming in, and I'd love to be able to deal with them all, but this is something that we could talk about all day. But conscious of time, that we're just coming to the end of our hour with you. And if you just want to drive the slides on there, Colin, just to remind people, we have a course, a one-day course with Colin on emotional wellness on Thursday, 11th of April. And you can click on the little QR code there, and it'll bring you to the sorry, too fast there. It'll bring you to the course page, and you can find more details there. We'd be delighted to see you all, because I know even just from the comments that have come in, this is something that people will hopefully go away, think about, and want to know more about. So we're making ourselves available for that on the 11th of April. And then sorry, the next excuse me, the next episode in the Power Hour Skills series, sorry people, is the power of team communication. So we're going from the personal to the team, kind of broadening out our communication skills, and that's on Thursday, May 2nd, and that's a 1 hour session as well with Neil Curran, who will be expanding on his sorry, this is what happens. I'm too emotional. That's what's going on his team communication skills. So obviously the individual will lead into the team and the organization as well. So I think that's it. And sorry for the frog in the throat, but thank you very much, Colin, for sharing everything. This is something, as I say, we could be talking about it for ages and ages. And hopefully in the one-day session, people will come along and we'll be able to do that. We hope you found some inspiration and food for thought in today's session. We hope you enjoyed the rest of your day and have a lovely Valentine's Day yourself, or with others, or in nature, or a bit of everything. Take care of yourself. Be good to yourselves. Hopefully we'll see you in the at the May session as well. And thank you very much for joining us. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.